As far as shooters go, not a great deal of them have really innovated that much. When it comes to depth, there's little beyond shoot enemy and don't get shot by enemy. It's hard to change the formula for one of these games while maintaining the shooter title. This isn't strictly a bad thing, but it's resulted in me being generally disinterested in the genre. Of course, some have done a marvelous job. There's Team Fortress 2, which introduced and refined a collection of classes, each with their own varied systems to make for combat with more breadth than your standard shoot enemy. Another favorite is Splatoon, which starkly recontextualizes what it means to own part of the map and shifts its win conditions to center around literal map control. There are countless others, but today I want to talk about the new sheriff in town. Sky Noon introduces its own take on the genre by dismissing standard kill conditions and placing heavy emphasis on shot positioning. The first thing it does is get rid of any concept of health. Rather than dealing damage, all weapons deal knockback. How much a player is knocked back varies based on what type of weapon is being used, among other factors. A player is defeated when they're pushed too far from the floating arena and are unable to make it back. Immediately, we have a creative framework for a fresh approach to the genre. If an enemy has sufficient walling behind them, then no amount of shooting will do you good. You'll need to reposition yourself to get the angle necessary to make an adequate shot. Additionally, you need to keep yourself in a safe position so that you won't find yourself flying away either. The weapon variety brings forth interesting conundrums about what you're able to do from what positions as well. I'm personally fond of the deadly close-up push of the shotgun and the long-range blasts of the hand cannon. There's also a revolver for careful sniping and the SMG for carefully tracking a player off the edge. Of course, it wouldn't be any fun if you just died the moment you fell off the land. You're equipped with tools that allow you to reposition yourself, and they can be exhilarating to use even without the shooting mechanics. Most notable of them is the grappling hook, which can latch onto anything, including other players, and reel you in. This mechanic alone would make for a wonderful game. You can have a ton of fun zipping around the world just getting from point A to point B. This can be a valuable asset in reorienting yourself after you've been hurled away from the map. In addition to this, you also have one of many sub-weapons. A majority of them can assist you in recovery, but a good handful can also be used offensively to effective results. There are a handful of modes you're used to seeing in shooters, but the game's assortment of arms and mechanics fundamentally shift one's method in approaching these modes. First is the standard deathmatch, coupled with its counterpart, team deathmatch. In this mode, we see just how different play is when your goal is to push opponents rather than to deplete their health. Position and precise aim are the keys to victory here. Next is King of the Hill. Every few seconds, a circle will spawn somewhere on the map, and a team needs to have their players stay within the radius for a cumulative amount of time. Because of the game's focus on pushing other players, staying within the circle can become incredibly challenging. The moment you enter the radius, there's little saving you from being immediately rocketed out by an opponent's weapon. Then it's a juggle to pull yourself back into position and boot out whatever enemy has taken your slot in the circle. From there, it repeats until one team manages to stay in that circle for the specified time limit. Finally, there's Payload. Usually, shooters require a player simply stand near a payload to move it, but Sky Noon asks for more. One makes progress in Payload by shooting the payload. This makes for some interesting situations. For one thing, your attention is mostly obstructed. Where another shooter might let you scan for enemies while moving the payload, in this game, the moment you look away from the cart, you're no longer making progress with it. This makes moment-to-moment gameplay more complex, as you need to constantly manage your surroundings to make sure that moving the payload is a safe option. For another thing, it adds layers to weapon selection. I personally am not fond of the SMG weapon, as my aim isn't very good, but its ability to shoot quickly makes it particularly effective when moving the payload, so I still find myself using it at times. That said, it's trickier for me to keep myself safe as I'm less efficient at using it against other players. Lastly, this manner of moving the payload brings back the main theme of Sky Noon, that being player position. If the payload is directly ahead but your goal is to pull it toward yourself, it's a little trickier to manage. You have a lasso that can give it one short tug, but it has a cooldown that makes it less reliable for frequent usage. One would be better off maneuvering themselves to the opposite side of the payload to push it forward, but that's not always an easy option when your opponents are constantly trying to push it themselves. As a result of all this, I would say the payload mode is probably my favorite of them, as it provides the most unique experience. But I can't downplay just how great all of this game is. Like I said before, I'm not usually big on shooters, but when one manages to mosey on up and give me something really novel, I get pretty excited about it. I hope to see Sky Noon be successful in the future, both because it's a great game and because its success can continue to inspire more innovation in future games, shooters or otherwise. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe if you would want to watch something like this again.